Welcome to True Echo, where powerful voices rise, and justice finds its voice. Today's story is more than a confrontation in the skies, it's a reckoning. A young black CEO boarded a flight expecting peace and professionalism. What she got instead was humiliation and injustice. But 5 minutes later, the tables turned, and the entire crew paid the price. What happened next shook the world. This is not just a story of discrimination. It's a story of power, truth, and redemption. I boarded that flight like I had 100 times before, no expectations, no anxiety. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done and the anticipation of my keynote speech in New York. I was Maya Richardson, founder and CEO of Right Tech Solutions, and at 32, I had built an empire on one principle: fairness in a world too often stacked against people like me. But as I settled into seat 2A, my reserved, confirmed, and paid-in-full first-class seat, I could feel the tension the moment she walked in. Karen Whitfield. I'd seen her type too many times before, the kind who treated courtesy as something owed to them and status as a natural-born right. Sharp suit, diamond-studded wristwatch, and an air of quiet contempt that didn't need to speak loudly to dominate a room. Her heels clicked purposefully across the carpeted aisle, stopping exactly where I sat. That's my seat. No greeting. No check of the ticket. Just a flat declaration as though the leather cushion beneath me were her throne and I, an intruder in her kingdom. I smiled politely, reached into my bag, and pulled out my boarding pass and platinum card. Actually, I booked it 2 weeks ago. Platinum member. Confirmed seat 2A. That should have ended it. But I wasn't naive. Enter Jessica Miller, the lead flight attendant, with a nervous smile and a practiced voice. There must be a misunderstanding, ma'am. This seat is usually reserved for our long-standing VIPs. She gestured to Karen like she was royalty, and I was the guest who had overstayed her welcome. I held up my card again. I am a long-standing VIP. Jessica blinked. Then the mask slipped just a bit. Surprise. Annoyance. Then, composure. Her smile tightened. I understand. But we do try to honor our regulars. The air around us grew thick with silence and judgment. I could feel the passengers watching. Phones were discreetly lifted. Eyes flicked between me and Karen. A low buzz of conversation spread like wildfire. And still, I did not move. Because this wasn't about a seat anymore. This was about who gets to belong. Who is allowed to be visible. Who is expected to defer, to apologize, to vanish. And who isn't. When the flight supervisor arrived, his presence cut through the air like a blade. Tall. Stiff. Pale eyes like frozen glass. Miss Richardson, he said, lips barely moving, I'm Trevor Davis, the cabin supervisor. We're asking you, politely, to switch seats for this flight. Miss Whitfield is one of our most valued travelers. He didn't say it outright. But every word screamed one message: you don't belong here. I paid. I reserved. I'm not moving, I replied, calm as ever. He leaned in closer. Don't make this difficult. That was the threat. Quiet. Measured. But undeniable. He didn't know who I was. Not really. Not yet. So I sat back. Smiled. I'm not the one making it difficult. And then came the final act of intimidation, the captain. Captain James Reynolds. 30 years in the air. Authority personified. He didn't waste time with charm. Just delivered the ultimatum with military precision. Move now, or we'll involve security. Phones were everywhere now. I could feel the cameras on me like heat. I turned mine on too, slowly, visibly. I'm Maya Richardson, I said, my voice clear. I am a platinum member. I booked this seat legally and was removed because someone decided I don't look like I belong in first class. That was it. That was the spark. Security arrived. Two stone-faced officers walked down the aisle like shadows. They didn't even look me in the eye. "Please gather your belongings, ma'am." I did, with dignity. Every movement slow, deliberate, controlled. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. As I walked past Karen, she smiled. Actually smiled. I memorized it. Because what none of them realized in that moment was that they had just ignited the biggest fire of their careers, and I was the one holding the matchbox. Back in the VIP lounge, the humiliation hadn't faded, but my resolve burned hotter than ever. I sent the footage to my lawyer. Then to my communications team. And finally, to my assistant with 5 words: prepare all documentation. This isn't over. While Skylux Airlines took off into the sky, it unknowingly left behind the one woman who had the power to crash them back to Earth. Because I didn't just buy a seat. I own 25% of Skylux Airlines through affiliated investment funds. And the $50 million digital transformation contract their CEO was begging to finalize? Mine. By the time the plane landed in New York, the video had gone viral, thanks to a passenger named Samantha Brooks, who had captured the entire debacle, including the bribe Karen slipped to Jessica. Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag justice for Maya. Hashtag Skylux discrimination. Hashtag black excellence denied. The backlash was swift. Brutal. Beautiful. CNBC called. The New York Times requested a sit-down. Fox News played the footage on repeat. But the most powerful message arrived by email. From Richard Williams, CEO of Skylux Airlines. Subject line: urgent, request for meeting. But I wasn't coming to any meeting empty-handed. I was coming with demands. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, but because every move needed to be executed perfectly. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about something much bigger. For every woman told she's in the wrong place. For every black professional who's been overlooked, downgraded, or dismissed with a fake smile and a whispered judgment. I called for an emergency shareholder meeting at 4 p.m. sharp. As Skylux's largest stakeholder, 25% to be exact, they couldn't ignore it. Not legally. Not strategically. And I wasn't coming to that meeting alone. By noon, my legal team had assembled in Right Tech's New York headquarters. Elite attorneys, a full communications division, social equity experts, every one of them laser-focused. We had hours of footage, screenshots, emails, and commentary. We didn't just have a case. We had an indictment. Samantha Brooks' video was the keystone, clear images of Karen slipping cash into Jessica's hand. Audio of Trevor's threats. The captain's cold ultimatum. It was all there. And that was just the beginning. The media frenzy turned into a public trial. CNN, black CEO kicked from first class despite valid ticket. Airline faces firestorm. The Times, the day entitlement met accountability at 30,000 feet. Fox, Skylux faces reckoning after viral first-class controversy. But inside Skylux's headquarters, a very different panic was unfolding. Their CEO, Richard Williams, realized far too late who I was. Not just a VIP. Not just a tech CEO. But the Maya Richardson, whose AI firm powered over half of Skylux's digital infrastructure and loyalty analytics. The same woman they were courting for a $50 million contract to overhaul their future. And the woman they had just forcibly removed from seat 2A. By 3:30 p.m., their legal team was in meltdown. PR reps were pushing pre-drafted apologies. Finance was begging for guidance on stock protection. And Richard? He was pacing his corner office, phone in one hand, sweat collecting at his collar. When 4 p.m. arrived, every Skylux board member, executive, and investor appeared on screen. The tension was nuclear. And then I appeared. Minimalist black suit. Bare face. No makeup, no gloss, no softening. Just truth, and evidence. Good afternoon, I began, voice steady. This meeting is being recorded. I walked them through every detail. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I simply presented the truth, frame by frame. Trevor Davis, intimidation. Coercion. Dereliction of duty. Jessica Miller, accepting a bribe, participating in discriminatory seating practices. Captain Reynolds, threatening a passenger into submission without cause. And Karen Whitfield. Her smug entitlement had become a global meme, Airline Karen, Queen of the Skies. Her law firm had already suspended her. When I finished, the room was silent. I dropped the hammer. You will immediately terminate these 3 employees and release a public statement explaining why. If not, I will dissolve my 25% stake and pull Right Tech Solutions from every Skylux contract, past, present, and future. A few board members blinked. Others looked away. No one spoke. Until Richard Williams finally raised his voice. Miss Richardson, these individuals have long served this company. Perhaps a reprimand or suspension. No. I didn't even let him finish. This isn't about individuals. This is about your culture. The rot that's been festering in your upper ranks, disguised as professionalism. If you can't take action, then I will. Another long silence. Then a vote. It wasn't close. Trevor. Jessica. Captain Reynolds. Terminated. Immediately. Publicly. The press release hit within the hour. We regret to inform that due to severe misconduct and violation of corporate standards, 3 Skylux employees, Trevor Davis, Jessica Miller, and Captain James Reynolds, have been dismissed, effective immediately. Skylux Airlines remains committed to fairness, equity, and the highest standard of customer service. I watched it go live. The truth was no longer whispered in the aisles. It was written in headlines. The story exploded. It leapt from niche aviation blogs to the front page of every major news outlet. Trevor Davis, the once proud guardian of first-class protocol, became a viral symbol, not of leadership, but of institutional arrogance. His image, scowling down at me from the aisle, appeared in countless memes labeled the gatekeeper of discrimination. Jessica Miller, whose forced smile and trembling hands had once charmed high-value clients, now found herself the unwilling face of cowardice. Netizens dissected every movement from the footage. Her silence, her complicity, the quiet acceptance of a bribe, all laid bare for a global audience. Captain Reynolds. The legend of the skies, stripped down to a disgraced figure now banned from flying. His crisp uniform and flight cap meant nothing anymore. Airlines across the country blacklisted his name. Even foreign carriers issued quiet rejections. But perhaps the most stunning downfall came from someone who'd never worn a uniform. Karen Whitfield. Airline Karen. Her smug expression as she claimed her seat became the punchline of late-night shows and viral TikToks. Her Hermes bag, her expensive manicure, her whispered orders, all turned against her like a digital guillotine. Within days, the board of her prestigious law firm suspended her pending an ethics investigation. Her name was wiped from the masthead. Clients cancelled. Colleagues distanced themselves. Even her social circles, once exclusive and unshakable, dissolved. Justice had found its footing. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because real change isn't born from a firing or a trending hashtag. Real change is built in the slow, grueling work that comes after. And I was ready for that part. Skylux's leadership scrambled to maintain investor trust. The shareholder meeting had bought them time, but only time. Within 48 hours, I stood beside CEO Richard Williams at a press conference broadcast across the country. He began with a statement drenched in regret. But I was the one who finished it. We cannot undo what happened, I said into the cluster of microphones, but we can make sure it never happens again. Justice is not a performance. It's a process. That's when we announced the most radical move in U.S. aviation history. Effective immediately, Skylux Airlines would suspend all operations for 48 hours. Every flight. Every lounge. Every team. For 2 days, the entire organization would undergo mandatory anti-racism and unconscious bias training, from the tarmac to the boardroom. Media outlets exploded. Half applauded. Half scoffed. But the flight stopped anyway. Skylux lost millions. But gained something far more important. Perspective. The training wasn't fluff. I personally oversaw it. Right Tech Solutions AI division partnered with psychologists, inclusion experts, and former victims of service discrimination to create a simulation program unlike anything the industry had ever seen. Employees stepped into the shoes of both the oppressor and the oppressed. They watched reenactments. They heard the unspoken thoughts. They confronted themselves. By the end of the second day, anonymous surveys showed that over 80% of employees had either witnessed or participated in discriminatory behavior at some point, and said nothing. The silence was broken. Across lounges, airports, and in-flight crew hubs, people began talking, really talking, about what they had seen, what they had ignored, and what they now had the courage to stop. And that, more than any termination or corporate apology, was the true beginning of transformation. What began as a scandal in the skies was now reshaping the ground beneath an entire industry. The 2-day shutdown was only the spark. The real fire came from within, from flight attendants who started questioning old VIP rules, from supervisors willing to admit that they had turned blind eyes to bad behavior, and from junior staff who now felt emboldened to speak without fear. But even with the terminations of Trevor, Jessica, and Captain Reynolds, I knew what most corporations get wrong: accountability alone doesn't equal justice. Growth, that's the real measure. So I proposed something radical. Something the board never expected. A new initiative, Second Chance. It wouldn't be a press-friendly charity or a one-day seminar. It would be an intensive, months-long transformation program. Designed not for the public, but for the perpetrators. And I offered them a choice: participate or disappear into silence. To the surprise of many, even to myself, they all said yes. Trevor Davis arrived first. Gone was the crisp uniform, the tight jaw, the smirk. He wore a plain t-shirt and jeans. No watch. No clipboard. At first, he sat in silence, arms crossed, eyes darting with suspicion. But as the weeks went on, something shifted. After a particularly emotional session with a group of racial equity counselors, Trevor broke down. "I never thought I was the problem," he said through tears. "I thought I was just enforcing the rules. But the rules were written to keep people like her out." Jessica's journey was different. Her first confession came in a whisper: "I just didn't want to lose my job." She relived the moment she took the bribe. Over and over. Every time she saw it replayed online, she saw not Karen or Trevor, but herself. The woman who looked away when justice needed her. In one session, she said quietly, "I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to speak. But the truth is, it was my place. It's always our place." By month 2, she was helping lead group discussions on fear and silence. Captain Reynolds was the hardest. Years of command had shielded him from vulnerability. He spoke in procedures, not feelings. Until we asked him to rewrite his incident report, but from Maya Richardson's perspective. It broke him. "I've spent my whole career preaching safety and fairness," he said slowly. "And in a single moment, I betrayed it all." From that day forward, he stayed after every session. He mentored younger trainees. He even volunteered at an aviation academy, teaching not just flying, but fairness. Each participant published a public apology, not crafted by PR firms, but handwritten, honest, and submitted for public review on the Second Chance website. Thousands commented. Some angry. Some forgiving. Some still grieving the harm they caused. But all of them watching. Trevor, Jessica, and Reynolds didn't return to Skylux. That chapter was closed. But they emerged with something more valuable than reinstatement. Redemption. Trevor began speaking at schools about unconscious bias and gatekeeping. Jessica started mentoring women in customer service roles, training them to speak up even if their voice shakes. Reynolds helped rewrite industry-wide aviation policies on passenger equity and power dynamics in the cockpit. And Second Chance? It grew. Dozens of companies, from luxury hotels to financial firms, requested guidance on launching their own versions. We didn't just write the manual. We became the movement. Because we understood something the world too often forgets: real justice isn't about punishment. It's about progress. By the time the dust had settled, Skylux Airlines wasn't just a different company, it was a different symbol. And I wasn't the same woman who boarded seat 2A weeks before. That moment, that choice to stay seated, calm and firm, had become more than a personal stand. It had become a global echo. Because every day since then, emails flooded in. From flight attendants who'd finally reported their supervisors. From passengers who'd stood up for someone being mistreated. From CEOs who saw, for the first time, how quiet policies had enabled loud injustice. Skylux's stock dipped, then soared. Investors returned not because of a rebrand, but because they saw integrity being rebuilt in real time. Not just optics. Substance. We launched full transparency reports on hiring, bias complaints, and equity audits. Right Tech Solutions expanded its AI fairness tools across multiple service industries. Airports around the country began re-evaluating their own elite access programs. But to me, the single most profound moment came 1 year later. I received a handwritten letter, from a teenage girl in Michigan named Kiera. She had watched the video of my removal. She'd seen the hashtags. The backlash. The hearings. The Second Chance program. But what struck her wasn't the firings, or the applause, or the cameras. It was that I stayed seated when everyone told me to move. I never thought someone like me could belong in first class, she wrote. But now, I dream of being a pilot. Not just for me, but so no one else ever gets told they don't belong. I cried reading that. Because that's what this story was always about. Not revenge. Not even justice in the traditional sense. But about reshaping what power looks like, and who gets to have it. Trevor, Jessica, and Reynolds weren't villains. Not at their core. They were people trapped in a system of unspoken bias, unable, or unwilling, to see the harm they were part of. But now, they're part of something better. Because we gave them something rare in our culture: accountability with a path forward. Skylux now leads the industry in transparency and inclusion. They've partnered with universities, diversity coalitions, and global equality firms. Every first-class seat, and every customer interaction, is now governed not by prestige, but by principle. And through it all, I've remained a quiet architect in the background. Not seeking credit. Just making sure the door stays open for the next person who dares to sit down and stay seated. Because justice, real justice, isn't about erasing the past. It's about ensuring it never repeats. So to anyone watching this, anyone who has ever been told to move, to shrink, to apologize for simply existing, stay seated. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not move an inch. At True Echo, we bring you stories that challenge the powerful, honor the courageous, and illuminate the hidden truths behind our modern world. Maya Richardson's story is not just about what happened on a plane, it's about how one act of quiet strength became a catalyst for global change. So if you believe in justice, accountability, and the power of standing, or sitting, your ground, subscribe to True Echo. Share this story. Leave a comment below. Let your voice become part of the echo. Because together, we're not just telling stories. We're rewriting the future.